And I think the ability to celebrate Juneteenth as well as the 4th of July just continues to perpetuate the duality of our people. We
Yeah,
have had to learn how to navigate both spaces,
we have.
and
Mhm.
that's just who we are.
Yeah.
We are dual. We
Mhm.
cannot help that. It's in us as much as uh, being black is. Um, Hello, 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 and welcome to the Truth Reveal
Hey.
podcast, season two. Somebody say
Yeah.
two.
Two.
Two. We are so elated to have you guys join us again as we embark on season two. Thank you for those who are just now being introduced, and thank you to those who have been with us through season one.
Yeah.
I would like to introduce my lovely co-host. I have
Yes.
Holly Harris, wave at the
Yes.
people,
Hello.
and April Rivers.
Hi.
Hi. So we're going to be just diving into some very good conversations this season. We took a little bit of a sabbatical and a break just to regroup and collect and come up with good content. Some of this content is going to be a little bit deeper and provoking. And we just want you guys to know from the very beginning that everything that we're endeavoring to do is definitely going to be laced in truth and laced in love. But we've made a conscious decision to lean into some hard conversations because we're required to. And we're going to filter all of those things through truth. So, with that being said,
Yes.
um, as we are about to embark on 4th of July celebrations, and as we have just finished celebrating Juneteenth, we really wanted to talk to each other and talk to you guys about this conception of Juneteenth versus 4th of July. And so essentially what I want to do is just kind of give you guys a little elementary social studies recap of our nation's history before we kind of get into the meat of the discussion. All right.
Yeah.
So, as you know, because you're listening, and if you're not listening, or if you're listening at a later time in history, right now it is 2020, the year from the portal.
Oh Lord.
And it's been a lot taking place in this year.
My God.
We are currently still in the midst of a global pandemic, a
Yeah.
national pandemic, and what has been arguably determined as or described as the largest civil rights movement of our lifetime as
Mm.
adults. Um, Being birthed off of the murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd.
Yeah.
So there has been a lot taking place and a lot of conversations that are taking place around culture, around cultural competency, racism, systemic, institutional racism, all of these things. And so we thought it'd be fitting because part of our podcast is about talking about current events and things that are taking place in culture. So we wanted to do just that. So we want to talk about and discuss Juneteenth versus 4th of July. But before doing that, I do want to give you guys a little bit of a history lesson. And at any time, Holly or April, if you guys have any questions, if you want to comment about some of the things that I'm going to be stating, by all means, just jump in.
Mhm.
All right, let's
All
go.
right.
All right.
Let's do it.
So, if you grew up in the United States of America, you had to take social studies so you could get promoted. You got to have that requirement to get your GED, your diploma, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So back in 1776, something that's very pivotal to our nation took place. And that was the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Now, just to even go back a little bit further and just looking at my notes, back in April of 1775, there was a conflict that was taking place between the American colonists and the British soldiers. Probably by the next summer, the whole Revolutionary War was in full effect. And from that Revolutionary War, there was this movement from the colonists to really separate themselves from British rule. So around mid-June of 1776, a 5-man committee was created, 3 of which were Thomas Jefferson. Anybody know him?
Yep.
John Adams and Benjamin Franklin.
Benji.
And so these men were tasked with the responsibility of creating a formal statement on behalf of the colonies and their desire to break away from British rule. And it was Jefferson, largely in part, who wrote what we recognize now as the Declaration of Independence. And that was written in Philadelphia, city of brotherly love, on July the 4th, 1776. And there we have the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that part of our history as a nation collectively. When I was doing my research, I was just interested, like, were slaves here? Which I kind of knew that they were. So it's documented back as early as August of 1619 that the first Africans actually came to Hampton, Virginia. And they mainly settled in Jamestown, Virginia, which is where we get America's first permanent settlement from the colonists that came over. And I thought that was interesting because we're talking about maybe 80 something, maybe 90 something almost years prior to the Declaration of Independence. Our presence was made known. But even in doing my research is stating that 1619 is the date that is being recognized. But historians are saying that as early as the 1400s that Africans had made their way to this continent. So we've been here a long time, a long time. So 1776, we had the Declaration of Independence. Gonna fast forward, got a question.
Yeah. So were Africans here prior to being brought over in ships, or you're just saying?
No, I'm saying, I think I read maybe as early as 1441, there were Africans that were brought over from Africa, where they had actually been a part of that transatlantic slave trade. Now, they weren't all in America. Some were a part of the Spanish and Portuguese trade, so they were being dropped off in different spots. But the point is, they had been taken from their homeland as early as the 1400s.
Okay.
Yeah. So we fast forward to 1863, and this is very important to us as a people group and as a culture, because that's where we are introduced with January the 1st, 1863, we have the Emancipation Proclamation. So basically, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued by then President Abraham Lincoln, and that was on January the 1st, 1863. And it basically established that any enslaved people in Confederate States being the Southern states, and of course, just to backtrack, we were in a civil war. So we have our northern states who were fighting against the southern states, the Confederate Army, the United Confederate States that had separated away from the Union. And this took place for about, I think it started in maybe 1861 or a little bit earlier, but the Civil War lasted for about 4 years. So in January of 1863 is where we have Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation. And that statement basically was just stating that any enslaved people in Confederate states, which were our southern states, that were in rebellion against the Union, from that point forward should be free. Now, the caveat comes into place is that in reality, even though this Emancipation Proclamation was signed, it did not instantly free Black people. It did not instantly free the enslaved people. The proclamation only applied to places that were under Confederate control and not to those slaveholding border states or rebel areas that were under the Union control. So you still had Northern troops that were advancing into the South, and you still had enslaved people that were behind Union lines. And a lot of the slave owners, even though this emancipation was signed, just did not want to adhere to it. They were bucking the system. So it's through the Emancipation Proclamation that we begin to celebrate something that's very important to our culture and what we just celebrated, which is Juneteenth. Juneteenth is short for June 19th, which is the date. June 19th, 1865 is very pivotal to African Americans because that was the day that the federal troops actually arrived in Galveston, Texas, and basically took control of that state and read off the Emancipation Proclamation that had been written by Abraham 2.5 years prior, stating that they were free. So it took a while for this news to carry. And even though it had been established 2.5 years ago, some of these slave owners were basically like, we need to get this last crop. So we gonna hold off on delivering this here message of your freedom. Which is like the craziest to me. Like, we not only have we enslaved you for hundreds and hundreds of years and multiple centuries, but we need you to work this last harvest for us.
Just
one more.
I can't stand y'all.
Right. So it's Juneteenth that honors the slaves that were in Galveston, Texas, being freed. And not just Galveston, Texas, but just the state of Texas altogether. And historians are saying that it was about 250,000 slaves that were in Texas at that time when they were being informed that they now were free. And I think it's just sad because this is something that happened 2 years prior, and they were still working.
Wow.
And still having no knowledge of said freedom that had taken place. And so it's through the emancipation we get the Juneteenth, and then later we know the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery as a whole. But did it really? Dun, dun, dun. So that's a whole nother conversation for another day. So I wanted to kind of give you guys just some background and just a review of our history as a nation and of our history as a people, and kind of dig into this topic because I've heard in lieu of all that's been taking place within our nation, within the world, within just our communities, there, not that I don't feel that Black people as a whole have not been proud, but it's like a whole new movement to say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. And so I've been seeing T-shirts, I've been seeing paraphernalia, with,
Yeah, they're trying to also make it a paid holiday.
right.
Yeah.
And so these are big things that really have not generated a lot of, uh, I don't want to say hype, but a lot of attention. Um,
Yeah.
Seemingly until this year in lieu of all this taking place. Now, I was familiar with Juneteenth and was aware of what it meant. And I think my uncle, Uncle Mighty, God rest his soul, who was Marcus Garvey embodiment in this generation, at least for our family, he was very, very knowledgeable about our history and told me a lot about my history that even I didn't know. So many, many, many years ago, I was brought into the awareness of Juneteenth and have went to numerous Juneteenth celebrations and festivals and things of that nature. But this is the first time that I've seen there be such a acknowledgement, not just from Black people, but from our white counterparts, and seeking to understand and seeking to know. And the weekend of Juneteenth, there were celebrations all throughout the United States of people celebrating. And so I think that it is very befitting that it should be something that's legalized, because it really is considered the longest running African American holiday.
Yeah.
Um, because you're talking 1865. But there seems to be this debate that's kind of taking place. I guess I would say culturally, about whether, and I don't even want to say, I don't think it's new, but it seems like it's being more pronounced in this current racial climate that we're in, where there is this debate on, do you celebrate Juneteenth or do you celebrate July 4th? Because a lot of Black people feel as though, um, why am I celebrating the 4th of July when my people were still enslaved in
Hmm.
1776? We were not free. So why am I celebrating that independence? So those are some questions that I would like to pose to you guys to get your take on it.
Okay. Well, I kind of wanted to go back to the whole history lesson.
Sure.
um, what I found interesting, which I don't know, maybe they did, but I don't think they did. When they were freed, it would have been nice if they would have broke them off a little bit of something.
So you're talking about the 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah, or after putting all of this time, energy, sweat, blood into building the economy, they draw up these papers, say, okay, now you're free. 2 years later, they come down and announce you're free, but you're homeless. You ain't got no type of resources to start with. Not only that, you have been beat down for so many years. There's just a level of just not really having identity for yourself or for your family or for your people. You've been cut off from them. You've been over here in this land working, and then they free you. But what did they free you to? then
Right.
they're you know then they begin implementing all these different things to keep Black people in a certain place. And so I'm just sitting here just imagining that they come down to Texas and they say, hey, you're free, and you're like, okay, what do I do now? You haven't get nothing. I have nothing to show for it, and I have to literally work from the ground up. And that's why I do have so much love and respect for our people, because even in the midst of that, there were still Black people who became millionaires, who we had Black Wall Street before they burnt it down. And there was still, even in the midst of all of that, able to rise from the ashes. So I just thinking about that just makes me even more proud or whatever.
Yeah.
But oh, go
I
ahead.
th- I think, to that to that statement, um, my mama would say that sounds too much like right. It would be
Child.
right, it would be fair, but if that were the case, then you wouldn't have enslaved a whole group of people, a whole
Yeah.
nation of people for over 400 plus years. But I totally agree, and that's why a lot of, our ancestors, they did stay, they sharecropped.
Yeah.
And because it's like what you said, where are you going to? Where are you freeing from? Some
Yeah.
of them, I think that was where we got that mass exodus of everybody moving north that was from the
Mm-hmm.
south, um, because they were at best freer than what they were being exposed to in the south. um, but yeah, I totally agree with that. What are you freeing them to? And then, I
Yeah.
kind of ended our history lesson, but talking about the 13th Amendment could
Mm.
literally take up this whole podcast
Child.
time,
Yeah.
because when you
That was a
start
debacle.
implementing what that actually did,
Yeah.
so you're free, but are you really?
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
then they start implementing you start getting caught on little petty crimes. You see, you don't have
Right.
any food, so you're hungry. So you
So
may
you
go to the
steal.
store and you steal. And then they lock you up again so that then they're still getting labor for free.
Right.
But I
Right.
digress. Go ahead.
Yeah. With the Juneteenth versus July 4th, and then I'll say since Sister Girl done brought up reparations, well, I'm gonna bring up a little bit about that too. But for me, the debate about, and I've heard some Black people say that they don't celebrate July 4th. Now, none in my family, but I've heard, some, because we fire up that grill, just, but I've heard Blacks say that they don't celebrate it and why. As for me, I'm gonna throw a little twist in there, not because I totally agree with it, but just hear me out. I believe that I should celebrate Juneteenth. But for me, I was not taught about Juneteenth. I didn't really know anything about Juneteenth until I was grown,
Oh.
college student. And then as I got older and had my own children, and I moved to a city that had like actually marketed the celebrations that we would have in the vendors. I've even lived in places where I don't remember when I was in Jacksonville, Florida, hearing much about Juneteenth celebrations and hearing friends say, "Girl, I'm going out here to for Juneteenth. You coming?" I didn't hear that. But here in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, it was we used to have something called the I think the Arambe Festival, which was like a cultural African American cultural, and then they went to the Juneteenth committee that that does our celebration. And this year, unfortunately, we didn't even have our festival. I don't
Mm.
remember what it was. It was either canceled because of weather, because we did have some flooding. It might have been that. I don't know if we had some flooding or if it was COVID. I don't know, but they canceled those celebrations this year. So I wasn't even able to take part in it this year. But for me, the little caveat I have is yes, our people were still slaves during July 4th. That meant it didn't mean a hill of beans to us then. But now that we are free ish, free, um, now that we are free, it does matter that I live in a country that's no longer under British rule. You
Mhm.
understand what I'm saying? Like the 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 independence that they, the whites of America, got with the independence of British rule affects me now to the type of America I live in. So I
Mhm.
think it does actually make a difference for us as a people to what our America would have looked like now. And
Mhm.
some can argue and have their arguments about whether that would have been better or worse. But I ain't got no real extra love for Britain. I ain't trying to live in Britain. So I would think, I wouldn't necessarily want to be under necessarily British rule. But so for me, I think we can chew gum and walk at the same time. I
Yeah.
can celebrate the 4th of July with my family and explain that history, but let them full know that we were still slaves. So at that time, for us, as whites were celebrating their independence for a country, the hypocrisy of them still keeping us, you know,
Mm. Yeah.
not
Enslaved.
Mhm.
enslaved is a hypocrisy. But that happened. And then my job now for me, as Juneteenth was kind of like a outliner for me, now in the midst of the climate and it being brought to the forefront, and me now having knowledge. Thank you, Latricia, for that beautiful explanation of history. But me having this knowledge now that is being more put to the forefront, I can teach that to my children and make it a
Mhm.
thing of importance for them. So I think both are important. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I'm less black, less woke, if you value that term,
Mm-hmm.
for celebrating the fourth and celebrating Juneteenth. But I definitely think Juneteenth should be uh, recognized. And my thing is this: my little debate about whether they're going to make it a paid holiday. Well, that puts the onus on my company to pay me. I don't want
Mhm.
that. I want the government to pay me what they owe me and my family.
Oh my!
Now back to your
You knew what you
reparations.
owed me.
I want the money that my kinfolk, my lineage put into this ground.
Yeah.
What you would they can calculate this. They know this. The hours worked, what the labor was worth, all the white families we made rich. They can
Yeah.
calculate. And I think African descendants of slaves, not people of color, but descendants of slaves in this country need our paper,
Yeah.
because that we should
Our
not have had to
paper.
work for free, right? And then we did get lied to. They knew it didn't make sense to let us go, and then we have nothing to be let go to, had no resources.
Mhm.
So they promised us 40 acres and a mule. One of the
Mhm.
many lies that our government has told us
Lies.
and reneged.
All
They were
lies.
like, you know what? We know we're gonna give you 40 acres and we're gonna give you a mule and y'all could do y'all startup. But somebody was like, hey, do we really want all the blacks
Mhm.
be really for real independent and have
Yeah.
wealth?
Mm-hmm.
Do we want that? Because if they get in the power, what do you think? Because unbeknownst to us, and I'm glad more of it's coming out. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm taking up a lot of time,
No, go
but
ahead.
as it's being revealed to us, the history of Central Park. This was not just a Southern problem. We was up
Mhm.
in New York, enslaved there, like we were enslaved down here. It just wasn't as much agricultural. We were
Mhm.
in their homes and we were
Yeah.
not paid,
Amazing.
and we
Yeah.
were not allowed to walk out without papers or any type of freedom. We were enslaved there too. We were pushed out of white society up north too. So
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
so this was an American problem,
Yeah.
and I we need to do so. Run me my money,
Uh-oh.
Run me my
She
coins.
said,
run me my
run me my
coin,
money.
and don't you
Dang,
dare say,
April.
Oh,
and don't you dare say somebody said this. I listened to someone today that said that they treat welfare like as a form of reparations. But I'm gonna tell you, the devil is a
the
lie.
most people that's on
The,
it are,
it's
I'm
white
sorry.
people.
Well, let's say the truth.
It's white people
You know?
because more of them. So don't you dare come with that.
Mm-hmm.
That that's a form of reparations. And I don't even think. I'm sorry, y'all got me on a tangent. But
Go
I
ahead.
don't even try to give my son no scholarship because if he don't want to go to college, I still say run me my money so he can do what he want to do.
Kurt.
Okay. Anyway,
She
But
sorry.
digresses after
I,
you run her money.
I'm telling you. But I agree with that as well as far as the whole celebration piece. Whether they wanted to do it or not, or they were just fighting for themselves. What they really were fighting for was me when it came to the Declaration of Independence as well. Even though we weren't recognized at that time, we are recognized to a certain degree now. I mean, it's still a little haziness going on, I don't know. but that it has gotten better, it has evolved to include us now. So I
Absolutely.
believe in celebrating both as well. Like April, I grew up and didn't really know about Juneteenth either until I got to college, and that's sad. And that's just a testament to us, our people, needing to learn more about ourselves, learn more about our culture, learn more about our
Amen.
history. Because in my household, we didn't. The only thing I was taught in school was the American history, and you had about one little old paragraph on slavery, and and then after the Emancipation Proclamation, everybody was free and everything was good. And then you went through, the civil rights movement, and it talked about all that kind of stuff. And then once Martin Luther King came, everything was all right. But it didn't go into detail, on our history or anything like that. That's why I would encourage anyone who has not been to the African American Museum in DC to go, because it is really, really, really good. I went and I was like, wow, have a lot of the stuff in there I didn't even know, and it does a great job of really breaking down our history or whatever. But going back to the whole discussion, but I do think, celebrating both, that there's no issue with doing that, because a lot of Black people fought in many wars, so
Yeah.
even though it took forever, and we're still going through things, we are included in that as well. At least I'm going to include myself, even if they don't want to include me. I'm going to include myself.
Right.
And yeah, but like I said, I think both are good to celebrate. But I definitely, like I said, didn't learn about that part of our history until I got to college. And so now, I'm celebrating it more. And I think this year was even more, pronounced, I guess, because of everything that's going on. So but yeah. And then going back to, I definitely agree with the reparations, because when you look at our Native American brothers and sisters, if you find out you're part whatever, Cherokee or whatever, you get a piece of, the casinos, and you know what
Piece
I'm
of the
saying, and stuff like that,
pie.
they have a lot of, generational issues that have occurred as a result of, what happened to them as well, just as we do. But at least they were given something. It's like, we still, playing tit for tat as it relates to that. But I definitely agree with April. Run us our coins. Amen.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. I actually agree with both of you. We were very present, as I stated in our little history recap. We were very present in this nation and present in this continent. We fought, our ancestors fought in the Civil War, on both sides, and for the northern side as well as for the southern side. And I think the ability to celebrate Juneteenth as well as the 4th of July just continues to perpetuate the duality of our people. We have had to learn how to navigate both spaces.
We have.
And that's just who we are.
Yeah.
We are dual. We cannot help that. It's in us as much as being Black is, so this country has a great sin that it has not repented for, and still is really dealing with the 3rd and 4th generations being impacted, and 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th, and on and so forth and so forth. But at the end of the day, I do feel like this is the lot that I have been dealt with. This is where I was born. This is my homeland. And I am proud to be an American. I'm not always proud of America, and I would not act as though I am, but I am proud to be an American, because this is it. I don't have the ability to change anything about history. And so it's like you kind of deal with the hand that you're dealt, and you make the best of it. But yeah, I do agree that we should celebrate both. I do feel like, however, like you guys have already stated, that there should be more emphasis on Juneteenth. And I think, that's just because, like you were stating, Holly, we've been so minimized as our part that we've played in history, that a lot of times we don't even know our history except we go and seek it out. I was having a conversation about my with some friends of mine, and these friends are Black women and Hispanic women and part Italian and just, diverse. And they were talking about getting their, doing the DNA testing to see where they came from, the ancestral testing. And my point was the fact that I even have to do that.
Yeah.
This just shows the ramifications of what slavery did, that I don't have that deep sense of connection to my people. I have to go have my blood drawn and submitted or whatever the process is to say, oh yeah, your people came from this part of Africa. You robbed us. There was so much that we were robbed from as it pertains to identity. And so it's not surprising that something as significant as a Juneteenth is something else that we don't always have the privy of knowing, because we didn't write the history books. So anything that we find out about ourselves, we have to be so intentional about seeking out. And shout out to Uncle Mighty that I mentioned earlier, because he did do the history. And we found out as a family that I think my grandfather's side of the family, when we traced back to Africa, we came from Sierra Leone. But I still want to do that, DNA testing. But yeah, I do feel like we should still celebrate, because the other reality is my people fought for us to be here. My people built this nation, this great America that it is, was built off the sweat, blood, tears, and sacrifice of slaves. There would be no America as we know it today had it not been for us. So I do have just as much right to celebrate the independence of it, even though my people weren't independent, because I am benefiting from it now. So yeah, I do. I do agree with you guys. Go ahead. I look like you about to say something.
I want to, I mean, that's awesome that you were able to pinpoint. Lord knows, I tell you, I need to do a whole family tree thing, because I don't know half. Lord help Jesus. But it is so important to really get to the root of, and it would be nice if we were able to have like that dual citizenship where, you know what I'm saying? Well, not only could we find out where we were from, but we could get on a plane and go over there and not have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops in order to do it. It would be awesome. I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, but that's awesome that you know exactly where you originated from.
I want to say, I don't know if it's Ghana or, not help me.
I think it was Ghana.
Yeah,
they were doing a program with African Americans who want to invest in Ghana, where if you're willing to, I think, buy property or something you do, that they will grant you citizenship. Because what they're trying to do is build the economy, and use the economic power and the influence of the African American. I got to look more into that, but it's really good. And as you mentioned, ancestry, that ought to be part of our reparations package.
Hello.
Ought to pay for every Black family to be tested to find out where our people got stole from.
Because I think it actually.
Also, go ahead.
Then they'll use the wrong, because the FBI used that database. I believe they do the catch folk. Commit crimes. You might not want to do your.
I'm talking about my law-abiding brothers and sisters.
I'm just playing.
I like that as a part of the reparations package, because that test on sale, it was I think for Juneteenth weekend, I think it was on sale for like $50.
On sale for $50.
On sale for $50. I think naturally, without the sale, it may have been like a $70 test that you have to a charge that you pay to get that information sent back to you.
I wanted to make one point since y'all brought up, so we were talking about history, and this is Independence Day along with Juneteenth is a celebration of our history. And
Mhm.
that is one thing also that I don't know if y'all saw my post that I did on Facebook, I don't know how long ago, a couple of weeks ago, that talked about, we're making great strides. Now let's continue to press into the education system. Let's start asking for, I mean, they're taking stuff off the shelves because it's bad image and press for black people
Mm-hmm.
and harmful. They're taking down Confederate monuments. Now, what they need to do is take our American history books and put us back in the places they erased us
Come
from. Because part of
on.
the reason why we can't celebrate certain history is because it's a
You
lie.
don't know.
It's a
This
lie.
is the abridged version where you took black people out of it because in order for you to rule over me, in order for you to do the
Hmm.
egregious things that you did to me or my people, we had to be something less than human because no
Yeah.
sane human can do that to another human. So you had to
Mm-mm.
go put that we were three-fourths or three-fifths of a
Three
human being,
fifths.
Hmm.
three-fifths of a human being. Then you had to go and make it like we were uh, not smart enough on our own and we needed masters. You had to lie
Hmm.
about the Bible and what it said. You had to lie,
All lies.
and just say that we were overly aggressive and had to be controlled. All those things, um, and you couldn't put us in history as educated beings that
Hmm.
could assist in building up the cotton gin, that could help build
Yes.
the traffic light, Benjamin Banneker, that, I'm saying, that the different places in history, even Thomas Edison, I don't know his name, had a black assistant. And I don't know if
Hmm.
that was his servant or what have you, but he assisted in the scientific work.
Yeah.
That's a
Mm-hmm.
real thing. So we are written out of the history books because we
Hmm.
couldn't look like we had intellect and be told that we weren't really human, and
Right,
sell that
right.
lie. But
How
now
does
that
that
we're
work?
not right,
Hmm.
but so today there's no excuses. They're
Yeah.
doing new editions of history books. They're doing new edition of math books where they put this stupid long math that
Honey,
is
that is
ridiculous,
unnecessary.
Why they make it hard for the
unnecessary.
kids? I
Lord have
said,
They're
what
making it
kind of
mercy.
hard for the
foolery is
kids
this?
and the
Ridiculous.
parents.
I'm telling
They're
you.
making new versions of history textbooks. So why don't you revise them? Let
Yes.
that be part of this movement. Revise
Hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
history books to put us back in history where we know you
Yes.
removed us.
Yes.
Then
Yes.
there would be
Or
no. Go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. You on a roll. You on a roll. Go ahead.
Then it would be no need for us to fight for an African American studies class where all the white
Oh,
kids can opt out of it and then only the black people be in there
come
because
on.
that's y'all history.
Include it all
No,
in
it's
together. It's
American
American
history
And
history.
because
that's
Yes.
our history is why you got yours.
Come on.
and that's exactly what I was getting ready to say. Instead of making it if you're gonna do American history, then you definitely need to include, like you were saying, the
Yes.
role that the black person, that the black man and woman played. And as I would go as far as to say, make it a requirement for graduation,
Hmm.
make it a
Yes,
requirement for college that you have to have taken an African American studies class to be fully versed. Because the truth of the
Yes.
matter is, even in the infusing black people into the American history, outside of the American history, our history was rich. and
Yes.
and we there's a place that should be honored for the
Absolutely.
contribution that we have made to this nation, because it's what you said. There would be no American history without black history.
It's so
right.
true.
We put America on the map to
On
the
the
point
map.
to where it was
And we
after
still
they
putting
took
it
it.
on the map. You know how much money
Right,
we put into this economy? Billions.
right. After
Oh, y'all.
after they took it from our native indigenous brothers and sisters, bless their
Yeah.
hearts. Um, so let me ask you guys this question: do you feel like for those African Americans who are like, I ain't gonna say that, but do you feel like they are unpatriotic for not celebrating the fourth? Because I've heard that too.
Well, I'll start. No, I'm gonna
Yeah.
start just because I'm not even gonna expound. No, I don't think part of America is having the freedom to do or not to do.
Yes.
You do not have to celebrate that if you feel like it's egregious and a sham. Then you go on and go about your business.
Hmm. And why is that what is considered patriotic? You see what I'm saying? Like,
Hmm.
why is, July the 4th is what is considered patriotic and Juneteenth is not considered to be the same. And see, and that's the problem. It's like what the majority holds dear is what's considered patriotic.
Hmm.
And then, other cultures kind of take a back seat. So I definitely don't feel like they're being unpatriotic because they don't celebrate it. It's their choice, it's their decision. And so they can do
And I
that.
think for me, like as I've gotten older, 4th of July has to be, and I'll be completely honest. Growing up, I knew what the 4th of July was. The 4th of July was, okay, it's Independence Day. But conceptually, how I conceptualized 4th of July was no school, cookouts, barbecues, like honestly, a day off from work, it depending on what time of the week it fell. It wasn't like, oh my God, I'm so excited about, the
Yeah.
actual core of what the day meant. And so it didn't even matter. I think just now as I'm, becoming an adult or have become an adult and just started thinking about these things probably within the past decade or so, um, I have started to say, I never used to post up the American flag. I wouldn't go in the stores and buy red, white, and blue T-shirts because I was just like, it's not that serious. And actually would look at people like, wow, they have a lot of paraphernalia for the 4th of July. Like, this
Hmm.
is out of control. Walmart is on fleek with flags and made
Yeah.
in America and whatever. And I used to just kind of have this thought process like, okay, I'm not doing that. That's not cool. And so, like I said, over the past decade or so, I've become to more so appreciate um, what it stands for, the freedoms, because like I stated, the duality of Black people is as jacked up as this nation is, I am free
Hmm.
ish, got
Yeah.
to make sure we put that ish on there. So I celebrate and I honor, that this is our day of saying we broke free from the colonizers, but did we really? Not really, but in one aspect of it. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's.
and I guess and for me too. I'm sorry, Holly. Were you gonna
Oh,
start?
go ahead. You good? Go ahead.
Um, for me, I think I'm in agreement with Sweet that for me the 4th has been kind of an outline. It was barbecues and fireworks.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
barbecues and fireworks. I didn't really go deep in my heart about the history. When I got a little older, every now and then I called myself wanting to get patriotic. I remember one year I was living in Florida and I used to get my nails done back then, acrylic and all. And I had like the girl put a flag on like my pinky finger.
Oh Lord.
Oh, you was that chick. Okay.
I was trying, whatever. I just thought it was cute, whatever. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be the 4th of July. Go on, give me a little flag. But but it was just kind of like, whatever. Um, so for me, I never really deeply like, oh, thank you, Lord, that we were free from that old Britain. You know, uh,
Yeah.
it kind of was not that deep to me either.
I don't think
Um,
nobody go that deep. I really
yeah,
don't
you
think.
know what?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how
Some
you.
people
There's
do.
some
Some people
people
do.
that
Well,
treat
maybe.
patriotism like it's Christianity, but that's
Oh, don't
another.
go there.
Oh, what?
Oh, you're starting stuff. You're
See,
starting
it's
stuff. But
starting it.
let me say
Okay.
something in reference to that point. Because I heard somebody say this and I thought, wow, this is so true. I don't want us, if we're going to celebrate Juneteenth and make it a national holiday, I don't want us to treat it the way we've traditionally treated the 4th of July, even though I know that we have the right to do as we please, because it's so significant to our culture. I don't want it just to turn into a day like, for example, Cinco de Maya. I'm not invested in any way, shape, or form for Cinco de Maya. But I know that Cinco de Maya, May 5th, is a day of independence for Mexico. But for the American people, that's just a day to go drink. You get half off on your drinks.
Margaritas and tacos.
Margaritas and tacos. But that's how Americans celebrate Cinco de Mayo. I don't want Juneteenth to turn into
soul food and African dances.
Right? I mean, seriously. It's Juneteenth, and then it becomes something else for other cultures.
Yeah.
Where it's like we're gonna get these Frederick Douglass free drinks and half off the drinks. You know what I'm saying? Like it becomes we're gonna go get this watermelon and chicken. I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out there and being funny.
Yeah, get the soul food plate. Yeah.
Get the soul food plate. I don't want it to be that because it's so not that and I say that even in saying that, I'm saying for me personally, like I said, I'm not invested in Cinco de Mayo. I think, I'm thankful that the Mexican people have their day of heritage and liberation, as we all have had our day of heritage and liberation. I normally don't celebrate Cinco de Mayo, not for any other reason than I just don't. But I do honor what it means for that group of people.
Yeah.
And I understand why it's a big thing for that community. And I respect that. And so essentially what I'm saying is I don't want how Cinco de Mayo is portrayed to Americans to turn into that for Juneteenth. Because
But do you think putting it on a national front is going to end up turning into that?
No, I don't think it is, but I think that it could, if not recognized in the severity and the seriousness of what it symbolizes for us, for maybe other cultures, it could be not taken as seriously. It could just be that day that we get off from work.
Another day off.
Yeah, because the Black people got free. We off today.
Yeah.
So
I think that's really good. I think that's real good, sweet. I never thought about that, but that's a very great point. And I think what will happen is up to us as a people. If we get this as a national holiday, it is up to us to control the narrative and teach others how to celebrate. I think about it like Martin Luther King holiday. There are still some states that do not recognize it. Help their heart.
Yeah. Indiana.
And shame. Oh, shame. We know your name. But I've seen where they have treated his holiday to say this is a day to serve. Like that on Martin Luther King Day, you go pack backpacks for kids, for needy kids. Like I remember I was off, of course, and I took the kids to a place called Marbles in Raleigh, North Carolina. And what they did was, because it was Martin Luther King Day, yes, they were open and running, but you would go into a place and you and your kids would pack book bags for kids that needed school supplies and foods and things like that. And that was part of your service to celebrate Martin Luther King Day because he was a servant. Okay, associating with that. So I think that if we do get that as a national holiday, it is very much up to us. And I think because Blacks have such a rich oral tradition, to continue to tell the history to our children and to continue to speak that history to non-Blacks, to say this is why this is important. And yes, you enjoy our food, enjoy the dance, but understand that this had to happen for us because we too are Americans and we needed to be liberated like everybody else. We
Mhm.
deserved our freedom from the very beginning. So, if we can help kind of control, everybody's not going to do the right thing, but I think
Right.
that we can kind of treat it like Martin Luther King holiday, where people look at it as a day to serve,
Yeah.
Right.
Or
a,
to
a
learn
day,
more about our history, you know?
Yeah.
right, to learn about our
Yeah.
history. Yeah,
Mhm.
we can frame it how we like to frame it, but
Yeah.
yes, so,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
but that was
I
a good
agree with
point.
that. I agree with
Mhm.
that. Yeah, I think that's good. I think sometimes because we function in these dual spaces, even as a people, sometimes we have to have these discussions and disagreements and topics amongst ourselves about what that dualism and duality looks like. Because I know Uncle Mighty was so well versed in African American study and history, more than me, and I have a degree in it. It was his passion, and he loved teaching on it. He loved talking about it, and I have African art that was provided to me through him. And we used to celebrate Kwanzaa
Mhm.
every year at our church. And he taught me those principles. And I remember, and not to say it way too much, but the point I'm making in bringing up Kwanzaa is I've heard, the point I'm making in bringing up Kwanzaa is talking about the duality. And I've
Mhm.
heard how sometimes I've heard people say, and I haven't done the research, and we used to celebrate Kwanzaa in our church. Our pastor used to allow us after Christmas to start celebrating, and we would have it was open to the public and to the community. And I've heard some people say that Kwanzaa was supposed to replace Christmas, and like they're competing for one another. And it just reminds me of how even with things that are indicative to our culture, we still have to be able to have that duality,
Yeah.
because I never viewed it as competing with the birth of Christ. I
Mhm.
viewed it as this is something that is celebrated. These principles are a part of my heritage.
Yeah.
And, so kind of like what you were talking about with Juneteenth, just recognizing that we are people, we are creatures of duality, and we're always moving in spaces and
Yeah.
different spaces, and sometimes we're even moving in those different spaces amongst ourselves.
Mhm. That's so
And
true.
that has to do with just the fact that our culture and our history has been robbed from us. So this is
Mhm.
our way of trying to reclaim.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that point of Kwanzaa was great because, again, it's about celebration of history.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
History will kind of reveal culture and different things. And um, that is funny. I've heard that too, that Kwanzaa, well, we don't celebrate Kwanzaa, we celebrate Christmas. But everybody knows Kwanzaa does not really compete with Christmas because
Yeah.
it's
At
It's
after
not
all.
on the
Christmas,
same day. Yeah.
and I think it's a lack of knowledge, and I think it has
Mm-hmm.
a little bit to do, and not and me also not trying to veer too far from what we're talking about, but I think it's a little bit of how, because we were devalued as a people, we
Yes.
devalue our own culture.
We do.
Think
Mm-hmm.
We
it's
do.
anti something. We're not
Mhm.
anti uh, our our Christian faith. We're not anti
Mm-hmm.
patriotic because we are
Yeah.
now going to celebrate our history and our culture that is
Yes.
unique to us. But we
Mhm.
have to unlearn that, and
Right.
that oh, it's either
Yes.
or. Like you said, we can't be ashamed of our duality. Other
Mhm.
cultures may not get it, but I can be Black Lives Matter and I love America. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Mhm. You
Like,
can.
Right.
I
That's
don't
so
have
true.
to be either or. And I think it's important.
Yes.
See, now even us having this conversation is making me now, I didn't have that either where I learned the specifics of Kwanzaa. I knew a little bit about
Mhm.
it, but this is even making me want to learn the tenets and think of how we can incorporate it. The fact that your church incorporated was amazing. And I
Yeah.
think we need to get back to that because it's just needed. It's just necessary.
Right.
Ain't gonna keep drawing
And
it
it's
out.
it's it's
Yeah.
something that you said, like your statement about I can be Black Lives Matters and I love America, because and I think in having this conversation and leaning into these hard spaces in this season and the seasons to come, as I stated initially, everything that we're doing, everything that we're saying is being filtered through, first of all, love, because we're all believers that make up this podcast, but also truth. And it's about tearing down those misnomers and tearing down those ideologies and those falsehoods that say that you can't be both. Because that's just who we are. We are both. So when the Irish celebrate the leprechaun, aren't that Irish celebrate the leprechaun? Nobody looks at that in what is it, April Fool? What is it, April Fool? Is that the Irish?
Oh, the St. Patrick. St. Patrick's Day.
Don't me like that.
St. Patrick's Day. Right. Look, I'm all off kilter. Nobody looks at them when they do that, because it's a part of their culture. Even if they're in America, it's a part of their culture. And there are certain areas, even within our nation, where when you talk about settlers and people coming through, I can't think of the name of the place in Ellis Island in New York, how you have all these immigrants coming in by choice. I digress, but by choice, they have these areas within that state where there's heavy populations, and they're not looked at any other way than this is the Italian celebrating how they celebrate. This is the Irish celebrate how they celebrate. This is the Polish celebrate how they celebrate, Russian, whoever the case may be. And so I think it's important. I want to say my Black pride does not equal white hate. I want that to be very prevalent, because race is a very sensitive topic. Just because I'm proud of my heritage and I have the desire to speak on the atrocities that have taken place doesn't mean that I hate white people, or it to me still speaks of the ability to be dual.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and just I know I was watching the Oprah. She had the 100 Black fathers on. She did her own spotlight last night, and Courtney Vance, one of the things he talked about is if we could just all listen to each other, if people would just listen instead of being so defensive, you will probably realize that we actually saying the same thing. Like you said, if I say Black Lives Matter, not the organization, but the statement, it's not saying, that white people don't matter, or,
right.
But just really being in a space where we can really listen to each other, and be able to glean from one another, learn from since we have embraced your history, can you learn from ours? Can you, sit and read a book on us? And we, and we've done that, our people, we are the type that, like you said, we are more willing to assimilate, more willing to take on, other people's cultures. And sometimes at the same time, like you said, not denouncing our own, but, kind of shoving our own into the background. But it's enough of that. Now it's time for us to really, especially given the time that we're in, I just think it's a reminder, that we need to be totally and completely rooted in our identity and celebrate that wholeheartedly, unapologetically, but at the same time, still being able to appreciate, America and the culture that, we're currently in, but celebrate our culture as well. And so if you're offended by that, then that's a problem, but go ahead.
Because the reality is America has a culture.
Yes, it does.
And then within American culture, there are subcultures.
Absolutely.
And so, to deny the subculture is to deny what intrinsically makes America.
Absolutely.
That this is the place where you are to come and be your unapologetic self.
Yes.
Here. So it is kind of like a oxymoronic to have people trying to be that and that not be embraced.
Absolutely.
Because
We
it
have
is a melting
embraced
pot.
forever. We have
It's a
embraced.
melting pot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you
And
embrace
fun
us
fact,
now? Amen. Go ahead.
right? Yeah, and a true embrace. Because fun fact,
Yeah. True
it's
embrace.
not that they don't like our culture. They
Oh, they
take our
love it.
culture and then divorce us from it and act like it was theirs.
Oh,
Just like we have
April, I'm gonna smack you
bluegrass.
right upside the head.
No violence, no violence.
Every
No
type of
violence,
music. Come
but
on.
every type of music,
Derived.
the banjo
Mm.
is an African instrument.
Come on.
They took things from us and
Mm-hmm.
said, "You don't get to have this. We like it,"
Mm-hmm.
and then divorced us from it.
Yeah.
So it ain't that they can't accept our culture, that they
Mm.
can't take the music, the art forms, as we know the history of music industry, where they take a song and it was originated by a black person, but they won't sell it, they won't show us on the album cover, then they get a
Mm.
white artist to mimic it and cover it and get the
Yeah.
money. So and another thing to that point, when Sweet brought up the Irish or St. Patrick's Day, you go in Walmart around St. Patrick's Day,
Child.
just like
Everything is green.
Every
Independence
Clothes
Day,
everywhere.
child.
Clothes
green,
everywhere.
kiss me, I'm Irish.
Honey.
It would be
4-leaf
amazing. It would be amazing
Come
for them to
on.
take on Juneteenth and to see
Yes.
T-shirts that
Oh,
say 1863 to
yes.
1865, emancipated. It would be
Yes.
beautiful to see a shape of America, but with red, black, and green stripe
Come
across of it,
on.
and having those
Can we
things
get that?
and have
Mm.
that being sold, and we get
Yes.
proceeds to go back to our community. That's the kind of
Yes.
stuff, Lord.
Don't
That's
tell all
what.
your good ideas. Don't.
Okay,
Honey.
look.
But
If
still,
the Lord
yes.
would give you
That's
the
Yes.
good.
knowledge, this can happen, y'all. We are
Mm-hmm.
this close if we don't
Yeah.
lose heart, if we stay
Mm-hmm.
focused, and we don't allow people to take the movement to somewhere else where we ain't trying to go. I read a post, and we're still on Juneteenth. We're still talking about history. We're still talking about holidays. But I read a post, and it was funny, that was shared by a famous YouTuber. And it was about, oh, I think in Florida, some realtors were going to stop calling the master bedroom,
Oh yeah, I heard
and
that.
change it to something else, right? And the black man was like, "Look at these people giving us everything but what we asked for.
Oh
We don't
Lord.
care nothing."
I never even thought about it, to be
I mean,
honest. Master
they're
bedroom. Never.
doing a lot, but a lot of it is like, we're going to give you this. I know you want
Yeah.
reparations. We know you want full representation. We know
Mm,
that y'all want to start getting loans, that we're giving. We know that y'all want to stop being locked up, or locked up at a higher rate for the same crime as a white person. But
mm-hmm.
let's take the mask off of master bedroom. you know, like
Major in the
we
minor.
Major
Mm-hmm.
and minor.
majoring in minors, giving
Mm-hmm.
us pacifiers, hoping that if
Yes.
it just give them this, and then they'll just take this
Yeah,
and be all
shut
right.
up.
But right, just take this and hush. But
Yep.
I really, and again, I don't want to come off as I'm being ungrateful for the gestures of
Mm-hmm.
kindness and what people are trying to find a solution, but we want what we're really asking for. Acknowledge
Mm-hmm.
us, to value us like you value everyone else. And part of that is acknowledging Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Part of that is letting the economic resources come back to us. Part of that is, again, reparations,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and not just saying that you got free labor. Do for us what you did for the Chinese people who y'all put in camps to build railroads and stuff, and you gave them
Yeah.
a settlement. Do for us what
Mm-hmm.
Germany did for the Jews and gave them money,
Yep.
for doing what they did to them in the Holocaust. This is not a new concept
For the Native Americans.
for
Yes.
the Native Americans to get the casinos and have
Honey.
certain rights. to be themselves a nation. It ain't for you to worry about. I'm sorry, I gotta finish this soapbox. It's not even for y'all to worry about if any of my dear white brothers and sisters say, but or even black folks. Oh, if we give them the money, they're gonna. What if they squander it? So what? It's
Yes.
still owed to us. And
Mm-hmm.
the fact that we were able to build Black Wall Street, the fact that we were able to
Yep.
build Rosewood,
Shows you that
and
we
the
got what
fact
it
that
takes.
can
Yep.
we call Atlanta out? The fact that Atlanta is
Mm-hmm.
like the Black economic
Come
mecca,
on.
we have been able to build goes to show you that everybody is not going to squander it.
Yeah.
We know
Yeah.
how to take nothing and make something. So surely, if you give us what's owed to us,
Mm-hmm.
we'll be able to fare out fine.
All right.
Why? I mean, what do y'all think? I mean, I don't even know if we can really answer this question, but I'm just thinking out loud. What do y'all think it is about us that you can give it? You can give it to all these other people groups. I don't understand. Go ahead, sweet.
I would say that it has a lot. I think it has a lot to do with in. We know slavery existed. That's neither here nor there. That's like a given. But I think I think the reason why there's so much pushback about giving it back to us, what is due to us, is because it's the acknowledgement of the role that you played. It's the
Mm,
acknowledgement that we were wrong. We did these people wrong. And we
mhm.
really do deserve, we should give them something. But I'm not going to give away what is quote unquote mine, regardless of how I got
Mm,
it. That's my personal opinion. I think it has to do with the validation in giving it really confirms what you did or what was
mm.
done by your ancestors.
Well,
That
but
part.
then, okay, but then our Native American brothers and sisters, they did them wrong. They gave them, casino land. So again, like what?
But these here United States of America were not built upon the backs of the Native Americans. You're talking about centuries of oppression.
So it's
Truth
just
be
too much
told,
money
we
to
should
give
own
away, I guess.
America, right? How can
Okay,
even
maybe it's
even
too
though
much money to give
they've done
away.
the numbers, like you said, they've done the math. It was never in intent to repay, because everything from 13th Amendment on going forward, nothing has been to institute any form of reparations. It's it honestly has been the exact opposite.
Mm,
Let's continue to shield, let's continue to hoard, let's continue to keep what's ours. From the 13th Amendment going forward, shout out and sidebar, if you have not seen the 13th
please,
documentary on Netflix,
please.
please refer to that and watch it. It will bless your whole life and enlighten
Whole
you.
life.
But from the 13th Amendment going forward, what has been put in place to assist in any form of reformation? How do you say it?
Reparations.
Reparations. Lord,
If
tongue tied.
anything, what's been implemented has been to break us down even
That's my
more.
point. That's my point.
So I just don't
Because
get it.
it boils down to greed. We're never going to
Yeah.
get it, but it's greed. It's greed. Go ahead, April. You look
There's a
like you're
fear,
burning.
though.
Lighten
There's
up.
a fear too about us that
That
I don't know. It's an innate fear. Go ahead, April. Go ahead. I'm just talking out loud. Go ahead, April.
Look. Okay, I agree with Sweet. That's part of it. That pride of I was wrong. But you're right, Holly. The Native Americans they were wrong against, and that they had to acknowledge what they did was absolutely egregious and wrong. I think one of the issues is we're constantly before their face. So Native
Mm,
Americans, now forgive me if I'm wrong, and my Native brothers and sisters, please don't come for me. I'm sorry, but for me, for me to see a full-blooded Native American, even though I live in Native American land, North Carolina has a lot of a huge Native culture, but they stay in their community.
That's so true.
They don't want to be a part of American society. They ain't studying.
That's true.
They want their own. So, but we're always in their face because we are incorporated in the society. We weren't able to just be put on a reservation and kind of off to the side. And I think so it's more in their face with that. And then two, I don't believe it's too much money. They got the money because the money you were able to muster up to give everybody a stimulus check and maybe get in the second round, the money that we had to go help a nation across seas when they're in danger and need some aid, the money we muster up, it's not the money.
Yeah.
It's not the money. They could all take a pay freeze in the government to probably cover what it would take to give each American household, family, what was owed. And even if they couldn't give us every single dollar, like giving us $100,000, $200,000 home, how many of us would take that as better than nothing?
Yep. And
if you would give me a home free and clear, and all I had to do was pay the taxes, and the value of the home couldn't be less than $125,000, $150,000, right?
Yeah.
And no funny business. But I don't really know what it is all the way. All I know is it's a tension there. And then some of it may be fear. I don't know why they think it's an association, again, that devaluing. And also that accompanying us with aggression and angry and feeling like if we give us the power, they're going to come back and get us. They're going to come back and want payback. And that's a lie.
White people, we ain't like that.
Dear white people, if we wanted payback, we would have come and been paid y'all back. Okay? There's been positions where we could have done, when I say, and I'm just talking about on a violence level. That's not what the majority of Black folks want.
Yeah.
We value life.
Yeah, it's what Kimberly, I think her name is Kimberly Patrice Jones or Kimberly Jones. She had a video that was floating around the internet heavily a couple of weeks ago in the heart of the riot, and her last statement just kind of still reverbs in my mind, and she said, "You should be glad that all we're seeking is equality and not revenge."
Yeah.
And I think that speaks a lot, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about systemic and systematic and institutionalized, and this podcast is taking a turn, we're essentially talking about equality. Just let us have an equal playing field. What we do with that playing field is solely on us, but put us on an equal playing field. So I agree with that as it pertains to some form of something. I don't know if it'll be seen in this lifetime. It may be seen in my kids and my grandkids' lifetime. But I still feel like we are in the midst of one of the greatest civil rights movements. And on that note, can you ladies give me your lasting thoughts as it pertains to our topic and subtopics today pertaining to Juneteenth and 4th of July?
Holly?
I would say, regardless of whichever one you celebrate, whether you celebrate one or both, it's your choice, it's your decision. Celebrating one over the other does not make you unpatriotic. Juneteenth is not I don't know what the word would be. It's not the underbelly of, or it's not to be a holiday that we just, toss to the side. It should be a national holiday, and it should be celebrated, remembered, and a time for us as a country to delve more into the history of African Americans. I'm grateful to have found out about it when I did, which was in college, and also just encouraging us as a people to learn more about ourselves. It's unfortunate that we do have to go outside of regular education in order to explore our history, but that's what we have at this point. Hopefully, as April stated, in the future, maybe this movement will birth out the opportunity to rewrite history, to rewrite the history books, to include us all in, so that everything is all in there together and there is no separation. But until then, as April stated, we have to be dual in our expressions, and run us our coins. All right.
Hey.
Run my money now.
Yes, and for me, just kind of the same thing. Just I encourage that, like Holly said, like Sweetest said, we have duality. You're not less patriotic if you don't do the 4th of July. But I would encourage, if you're not going to celebrate the 4th, please, as a people, start telling your children about Juneteenth and what it means to us.
Yeah.
Whether America honors it as a federal holiday or not, because I'm going to start doing that, because I'm being educated even on my own, just to put the level of value on us. We deserve honor, and our history deserves to be told just like everyone else's.
Yes.
And celebrate it. Celebrate it. So that's a thing. And with our subtopics, reparations. Like, I'm about to be like, I'm about to not want to even hear from a candidate unless they say reparations a couple times. I want what is owed to my family.
Yeah.
This is not no handout. This is fees for unpaid labor. Okay. Yes. All right. But anyway, yes, celebrate Juneteenth. And this weekend for the 4th, we having a crab boil at my parents' house.
Oh, man. I want to come. Can I come?
Can you get that address out?
I'm telling you, to the public. We want to crack some crab.
I will travel for
Come
a good
on.
crab. Yes, I will.
Oh, yes. My God.
Well, I would say thank you to our listeners as we discuss Juneteenth and we discuss the 4th of July. Thank you to my co-hosts for all of your comments and our subtopics that we kind of segued into as well. Just to reiterate what's already been stated, I think the theme for me of this whole podcast was duality. We are people that are dual in nature. We always will be. We always have been. And I think that's to be embraced, and is what Holly said. Regardless of what you choose to celebrate, the truth of the matter is you can celebrate either or you can celebrate none. There is no right or wrong to it. And I just would hope that we wouldn't shame our brothers or sisters that do choose to celebrate both or none or one or the other, because I think it just speaks to the duality of who we are as a people group in this country. I would also say that everything that we viewed here, everything that we discussed here is it is our heart, is our sentiments, and even even when it comes across as passionate, it's always laced in love, and we endeavor to always filter it through truth. And so we are open to comments and dialogue further. The information will be provided to you on our page. We look forward to deep diving, scuba diving into some topics this season that some may be offensive, some may challenge you, and we just hope that you guys will stick around for the ride, and know that everything that we're doing is always to be laced in truth and in love, even when it may sound harsh, even when it sounds not that way. We open ourselves and avail ourselves for conversations outside of this podcast. And thank you for listening. And we will touch base with you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Season 2.
Yeah. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our episode today. Don't forget to hit subscribe below.
And like us on Facebook at the Truth Reveal Podcast.
And follow us on Instagram at Truth Reveal Podcast.